us day to day.
For sure, yeah. And I think what we did too at Cityside Properties is like we immediately started doing script practice on it. So we started thinking of different objections that people were going to have, and then we started implementing them in our our everyday lives of talking to buyers, talking to sellers. And I think David and I have both gotten multiple sellers, buyers questions just in our own personal, business that we've done. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And at the end, of course, want to have a Q&A, and that way, maybe you guys have scenarios or questions that we could try to answer for you as well.
Well, these guys are top producers and performers, so I would love for all of y'all to come up with a really tricky scenario to throw them for a loop and see if they have a objection handler for you.
Oh, come on now.
I
Making it
know.
difficult on us.
That's how we grow, though. I mean, going, oh no, I
100%.
wasn't ready for that one.
For sure. I think my first Zoom I watched on this subject, I guess, is a Tom Ferry Zoom, and there was a lady in there that she was so good, and they were doing specifically kind of like cold call scripts, and this was fresh, right? Like it just came out, and maybe it was that next week, but it's amazing how top agents can overcome objections really, really well just off the cuff. So I like doing that. It does help us grow. All right, guys, one more minute here and we'll get started.
When you guys first started doing script practice, y'all had some kind of saying. It wasn't like practice until you could get it perfect. It was practice until it's impossible to mess up. Like it's so innately, personalized and internalized that it's just almost feels like natural conversation.
Yeah, internalize is I think it is the right thing there. Like for our script that we use and stuff now, like a buyer script or even our listing script, I don't have to have anything in front of me. I know the route the conversation goes. I do it, every day, all day. And so when you have it that internalized, it's so much easier to have a good, just normal conversation with someone, and it doesn't sound scripted, because that's the key here. Doesn't sound scripted. So this will be a little bit different of scripts, because we're going to be specifically focused on kind of the objections that we're going to have from buyers and sellers when it comes to this lawsuit. But I would highly recommend coming to our normal script practice that we have, which is usually like 30 or 45 minutes, but we'll let you guys know when that is, because that's whenever we go in there and we actually, from the very beginning of the conversation, go through the entire script. So anyway, yeah, I definitely recommend that too.
Awesome. Well, let's get started and rock and roll.
Yep.
Sydney's going to record this for anyone who missed it or wants to go back. And then you guys think about some objections or situations that you're already running into, because consumers are paying attention and they're watching the news and they're asking questions. And you guys can shoot them over to Michael and David. Thanks, guys, for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks, Amanda, for having us. So, hey, everybody. My name is Michael Bass here. I'm the team leader at Cityside Properties Group. I have one of our top producers, David, that's going to be helping me out here as well. We just really wanted to do this, for you guys, for Team Legacy, just so you can kind of see what we've been running into in real life scenarios. And then we've, came together to really try to come up with some good objections on this as well. That's why, we're going to do a Q&A once we get kind of finished talking about some of the normal ones we've been hearing, and we'll love to hear from you guys on that. So I'm not going to be talking much at all about like the actual lawsuit itself or anything like that. That's not why we're here. Just how it really affects the buyers and sellers and questions that they've been asking. So getting into this, I think the main word of the day is transparency. Okay, we have to be transparent with both buyers and sellers from this point forward. And to be quite honest with you, I think most of us probably thought we were, but the lawsuit suggests a different thing. So we just need to make sure we're very clear with the wording we're using, making sure we're being super transparent with our buyers and sellers, and making sure they know who's paying for your commission, where it's coming from, all of that good stuff. David, I guess leading into this, I know you work on both the buyer and seller side of things, but what's one thing that you've ran into so far with just having someone ask you kind of a question regarding this?
So, I've had it come up on both sides, and we've talked about this before in our city side meetings, but the one that keeps coming back to me on the buy side, especially because I do work with a lot of buyers still, was a matter of, just simply asking, like, how are you paid, basically, how much am I responsible for, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And even though I felt like I had answered it very thoroughly for them, they ultimately still chose a different agent who really just kind of lied to them about everything.
Yeah.
So, because they came around and were like, well, we work for free. I was like, well, no, you don't actually.
This is on the buyer side, if you
This
guys
is on the
are
buy
wondering.
side still,
And this was
right? And it was
very
something,
popular. This was
yeah,
very popular before this lawsuit, to tell your
yeah,
buyers and sellers, hey, my services to you are free. You don't have to worry about it. We're going to get it from the seller. So
yeah.
this is actual real life scenarios that we're running into. David actually lost a client because David was like, well, I mean, technically, no, it's not free. We're still going to get the seller to pay for it, but it's not free, I mean, so
Yeah.
anyway, go ahead, David.
No, it's all good. But on the sales side, it's they've had questions about commissions, about having to pay for both sides, but ultimately, just kind of diving into the data behind it, and the supporting information there, it really just kind of moves the conversation right along. Like, there's really nothing that I've at least had so far past
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah.
So no one's really giving me that much of an issue beyond that.
No, and that's great. And I'm glad that you're articulating that. And then I'm going to go ahead and start on the sell side, like the seller side. Like, let's say we're representing the seller, and I have a few on the seller, a few on the buyer side that we're going to really get into. And again, it's not happening a lot, even though I've had it happen. But it's going to happen a lot once this finally goes into place. Right now it's August 17th, if nothing's changed, but we'll see what happens. So the first seller objection, right? You're in a listing appointment, you're talking to the seller, and the seller says, hey, I definitely understand paying you, like paying the listing agent side of commission. What you just gave me, the presentation you just gave me, I'm fine paying 3% to you. But I don't want to pay a buyer's agent commission. Like, I just don't see why I would need to pay that buyer's agent anything, right? And how do you overcome that? Because that is an objection that we're going to have to handle. The easy way out, to be honest, is just to be like, oh yeah, whatever, we don't have to pay him. But that's not the route that we want to go. We are all real estate agents here. We're all working both sides. And the worst thing that's going to happen, which will happen to all of us, is we're going to be on that buyer's agent side of things. And then you try to go and you look and you start talking to the listing agent, and they're not offering anything, right? And so there's a few things that you can say there's a few things that you can say as a listing agent in that point, to try to get them to come around and to understand why they would want to pay concessions. Keyword concessions. Make sure you change your verbiage, but concessions to the for the buyer's agent specifically. And so you want to focus on what's important to the seller in this situation. Is it the however much concessions that they're going to contribute specifically for a buyer's agent, or is it getting the house sold for top dollar in a market that on average has that in there? And when I say that, we're going to be able to see, and again, you won't be able to see commissions, but you'll be able to see concessions that are specifically geared towards a buyer's agent. And you're going to be able to research that, and you're going to be able to see that in a specific neighborhood or area or whatnot. And I'm going to really, really focus on the data point there, because for me, whenever a listing agent says, hey, or not a listing agent, a seller comes back and says, hey, I don't want to pay the buyer's agent, I'm going to say, hey, I get it where you're coming from. I mean, that's 1, 2, 3% of concessions and money out of your pocket that you don't want to pay. But let me ask you, knowing that this data right here, what I'm showing you is that 98% of the sellers in your market right now are paying. And again, it could be whatever, right? You're giving them the data. Maybe it's 3%, maybe it's 2.5%, whatever it is, but they're giving on average this amount for the people that are coming. And not only that, the properties that don't offer that concessions are taking this much longer to sell. So the agents that or the listings on there that have $0 concessions to a buyer's agent, they're on average taking 60 days to sell compared to 15 in your market. So it's one of those things. Do you mind waiting? Do you want to wait and you want to try to find a buyer by ourselves, and then that doesn't mind not having representation? Or do you want us to be super aggressive in the market and be kind of the market norm there, so we can really incentivize the buyers to come want to see those properties, so they can have their agents covered, or the agents' fees covered, because that's what it is. And so, David, anything on that? Because that's kind of one of the first step on how I would go about that, is just the data that you would be finding in the market.
Well, it's, you did touch on the like the reaffirming, the point that the seller's bringing up, always, as part of basic scripting, is reaffirm and then move forward to the next point there. So what I like to do is, when, just like you did there, reaffirm, like, hey, I totally get it. I can see why you wouldn't want to, have to come out of pocket for that extra expense there. But let me ask you this, is it more important to you to not have to pay for that, buyer's agent assistance on the other side of the transaction? Or is it more important to you that you net the most money on the sale, when the dust settles? And so far I haven't had a situation where somebody's like, well, I just absolutely positively, will not, cannot, pay that buyer's agent over, when presented with the alternative, which is making more money on the sale. And so that's, kind of my lead. And then, well, the situation is here, the data shows that, all your neighbors are providing this much to them. They've been selling for this. Those that don't, or perhaps, they're staying on longer, taking longer, and you can explain why.
Exactly.
But,
and one way also to come about this as well is, we know as real estate agents that if I'm representing a buyer and they love a house and it doesn't show any concessions, we're going to try to, and this is one of our buyers, I guess, objection handlers too, you'll hear in a minute, but we're going to try to negotiate on our buyer's behalf to try to get that those commissions covered, concessions, or in concessions, right? So another thing that you're having to talk to your seller about, if this objection comes up, is that, look, we can think about this right now, and again, looking at the data, looking at all this, and knowing why the benefits would be for that another agent to be on the other side, or we can, again, wait, going to take a little bit longer to sell, but then once we actually do get an offer, and especially with someone with a buyer's agent, they're going to come and they're going to negotiate that at that point anyway. So they're going to already try to negotiate that within there, right? And so I would prefer to do it up front, be transparent about it, and just make sure that we are in that market, the market averages. And then Nikki, actually, and I want to go ahead and answer this question, because this is geared towards this. Regarding the data found in the market, would the MLS have any details on buyer's agent concessions for closed transactions? I do not know that specifically, but I do know it does have concessions already built in. I really hope they split it, to be honest with you. I think they will, because FHA and VA now have both gotten on board with concessions not counting towards the maximum amount of concessions that they can have as closing cost. So they're not going to count that against a FHA or a VA buyer now, concessions for the buyer's agent commissions. So I'm hoping that our MLS gets on board and actually has a buyer's agent concession or some other figure in there post-close, because it won't have it during there, but post-close, I don't know. But if not, it'll just show concessions. David, I know you want to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say that, I mean, currently the way the system is set up, there's already the information available on any of the sold comps there that you're reviewing, where you can see how much seller concessions the sellers have given in there, as well as repairs, money towards repairs for the home.
Yep.
So so that data's already there. I don't know if they're going to create a separate buyer concession, buyer agent concessions section specifically, or if that'll just be lumped in with the current, concessions space that they already have.
Yep.
So, but either way, I mean, I imagine that we'd still just be putting that data in there, in that column there.
For sure, for sure. I agree with you, and we'll see how that ends up panning out. There are things that we do not know as of yet how this goes. So we're going to have to continue learning as we go as well. But these are questions that are being coming up. Another objection is, let's say, even in this same conversation, they're like, I kind of see that. So let's just give them 1%. We'll just give a buyer's agent, concessions 1%. And that way, we can just go about our business and we're still offering some concessions. And again, I'm going to come back to the averages of the market in that area, what that is. So if it's something's 2 or 2.5% on average, I'm going to try to be with that average, simply because when you can lead with data and you can lead with the market, really, it's the facts of the market. I do this with pricing as well. I tell the seller, hey, these are the facts of the market here. If we're under 2%, I'm just going to throw a number out. It just depends on the merit. But if we're under 2%, these houses are just sitting on the market for longer. Here's the data that proves this. So saying all of that, could we offer them 1%? Yeah, and I'm going to do whatever you want to do, but I'm going to recommend that you at least get here, right? And as you can tell, it's interesting because it's almost like us as listing agents are kind of fighting for someone else's commissions, right? But at the end of the day, that's what I think top producing agents are still going to do that. And I think that's the reason why most listings on the MLS will still offer concessions, because you're going to have to incentivize, and I want you guys to hear this, you're going to have to incentivize buyers to see your property with their agent, because they're going to be able to come and they're going to be able to, in that conversation with a buyer's agent can say, hey, this is the situation. I'm going to get more in detail on buyers in a second about how you do that. But here's the commissions that I charge. Would you want to see any properties that are not offering any concessions, or would you want me to just kind of not even show you those? And I think that will be a valid question that we ask people, because some of them will be like, yeah, we don't have the funds to pay that. And so, yeah, don't even show me
It's
those.
just being real.
Yeah, it's just being real. So anyway, the next one here is, oh yeah, this is a good one. So, and this is a reason why, let's say someone is really like set on not paying any commissions at all. Like, hey, we don't even need an agent on the other side. You can handle the buyer, just go find me a buyer, whatever. We want an unrepresented buyer. So this is true today as well. You don't want an unrepresented buyer on the other side. First and foremost, it makes more work for yourself as the listing agent, and you have to articulate this to your seller, and you have to let them know like what all that entails. And then again, it's going to take longer of a close period unless you're really on it. And so for me right now, what I do is if that happens and I'm charging 3% on the listing side of commissions, and there's an unrepresented buyer, I always charge a minimum of 1% to an unrepresented, not to the unrepresented buyer, but to my seller. So that 1% actually allows me to use time, effort, and energy into doing everything that buyer doesn't know how to do, but they want to do, right? Hey, I want to schedule inspections. Hey, how do I read this inspection report? I don't know. Like, I can't help you. I don't know how to do that. Okay, well, we want to ask for this, and this, because, and it's just like, it's not going to go well because buyers are not knowledgeable on overall inspection reports, how to read a survey, how to read an appraisal. What is the title commitment? What's this tax cert that I'm getting? What is this? What is that? Like, that's what would happen. And what does happen when you have an unrepresented buyer on the other side of the transaction. They essentially use you for as much knowledge as they can And then for you, it's kind of tricky because you're like having to be as not unbiased, but you're having to make sure you're not representing them at all. You know what I'm saying? So it's just always so much trickier, and being able to articulate that with a seller, they can understand that as well. They really do. They'll say, I see what you're saying. You would want another professional on the other side. And I do think that in play, because the commissions are going to be negotiable here, I think that there's a possibility that we get sellers that say, hey, you know, if this is an agent that knows what they're doing and is going to make this process easier for us, sure, we'll give them the 3%. But if it's some, you know, person that doesn't know what they're doing and they're lowballing off for us and they're doing this and they're doing that, I'm only going to give them this much. I truly think that we're going to run into some sellers like that as well. What do you think, David?
I mean, it's possible. Structuring the like a multi-tiered commission, you know, would be a little bit tricky on the initial listing agreement, but you know, it could be done. But really, everything is about setting that expectation, you know, with our seller clients there, just making sure that they understand, you know, especially in the early stages, because I think, you know, and I anticipate that, you know, especially in the early part of the changes here, we're going to see a lot of the same data that we'd seen before, where, you know, sellers have been offering the 2.5% to 3% on average to buyers, agents, and whatnot. So you're not really going to see, I don't think, a whole lot of the sellers, you know, straight up just offering that 1% or, you know, nothing, you know, to the other side. And so if somebody is really adamant about, you know, pushing forward with that, just make sure that, you know, that we're setting that expectation with them, like, hey, you know, there's no other real, you know, maybe there's no other real comps that show that to compare it with, no other data that should really compare it against, and this person just really wants to test the waters. Just make sure that the expectations are there. Like, hey, you know, there's nothing that really shows how this will go. I anticipate that it's going to be like this. It's going to sit longer. We're still going to get some offers, but they're going to be building in those concessions into those offers. Or they may be coming in below asking because of it. So just making sure that, you know, they understand that that is a real possibility up front, so that when it does happen, you know, you've covered your assets there.
Yeah, for sure. And so I agree completely on that. I mean, it's all going to be about setting expectations with your seller, and then of course the transparency on, hey, you still, yes, you're going to get to set this concession amount to this buyer's agent. Absolutely, you get to choose this. This is like, I'm here to guide and I'm here to, you know, give you my professional opinion on things. This is what the facts of the market are saying. So in summary here for sellers, I think the main objections is really going to be, I don't want to pay a buyer's agent. Why would I pay a buyer's agent? Okay, let's just give them a 0.5%, or let's just give them $2,000, or let's just give them this. And it's going to be up to us to be able to hopefully overcome that objection or those objections in order to properly articulate how and the reason why we wouldn't want, you know, an unrepresented buyer on the other side, and then why we would want to give them whatever that fair market is in that area of the normal concessions, so we can make sure that we're getting the maximum amount of foot traffic through the property, which we all know sells the home. So anyway, shifting gears to buyer side, and I think the buyer side is probably going to be a little bit more difficult to articulate to a buyer's agent. I think the seller, or not a buyer's agent, but to a buyer. I think seller wise, it's going to be, in my opinion, it's fairly easy as long as you're able to give them the data showing that, hey, this is how it's going to be. So on a buyer side, let me just check really quick. Okay, the Teresa team. What do you think your conversation is going to look like when you have to sell? Okay, we're going to get this. So I keep coming with these. We're going to get to those at the very end. All of those specific scenarios that I'll look at and we'll be able to answer for you. So on the buy side, the number one thing here is we need to get something signed, right? We have to get a agency agreement signed with this buyer, and it has to have commissions in there. So, and here's the thing. If you guys don't already know, we already do this. We already have a buyer's tenant representation agreement that specifically states in bold lettering that if we are unable to collect funds, commission funds, or whatever from the listing side broker, that the buyer would be responsible. Now, do any of us or many of us ever follow that? I don't think so. I don't think we have had to, right? Typically we don't. But it's technically in there that they're signing anyway. So it's just, again, about transparency, upfront conversation that you're having with them, compared to, I think how, a lot of us did maybe before, and maybe just sent the buyer's rep agreement whenever we wrote an offer or something like that. I do think, and this is just side note, I do think that there's going to be multi-tiered and multi-level agency agreements based off specific situations, showing one house. So maybe doing like a 1-day thing or a 1-week thing or a 1-month thing, whatever that might be. I do think that, because again, in my opinion here as a top agent, it's very difficult to have one conversation with someone over the phone and have them sign, a long-term commitment with you. You have to be able to, give some type of value proposition to them that would make them want to do that. And in my opinion, the best way to do that is actually sitting down with them, meeting with them, and having a full-blown buyer's appointment with them. If you're able to do that, then you can actually show the value with a buyer's guide or something that, we've created, your team have created, the brokers created, that just shows all of the value assets that you bring to the table. So let's get into the first objection. Hey, I thought your services were free, David, because this happened to David. Hey, I thought your services here were free. I don't have the ability to pay, 3% commission. That's the objection.
Yeah. That's actually, thanks for bringing that up, actually. So, as you're probably aware, a lot of the lawsuits that have recently occurred have brought a lot of this to the forefront, which has been fantastic, because it's given us an opportunity to really go back and reflect on really what's been going on here all along, and just kind of making sure that everybody's aware of how things have been going. And honestly, buyers have always been, kind of responsible for that commission, setting that expectation there up front. But we've been negotiating that in all of our offers so far, and the sellers have been paying that for our buyers. So that's part of the value.
Data.
That's part of the value that I'm able to bring, to you specifically as a first-time home buyer, making sure that these sellers are going to help cover that part of it. Because I know that money's, going to be, clearly on the forefront of everyone's mind here. We're maybe going FHA, or we've worked so hard to save up for that down payment, closing costs, and everything else. To add on the buyer's agent fee on top of that, we're going to do the best we can to make sure that's covered on the other side. So, and just being upfront with the sellers, initially in those conversations. So just to let them like, hey, we're going to need buyer's, agent concessions, you guys offering that, and so on and so forth, and then presenting that value there to them.
That's good. No, that's really good there, David, because, and see what, it's just about transparency. Hey, I don't have 3% extra. I mean, I'm already putting 5% down, the minimum, whatever conventional. I don't have 3% extra to pay you. Hey, I feel you on that, right? I know that's a big pill to swallow, 3%, all that good stuff. So let me ask you here, let me show you, most of these properties that we've already seen, the vast majority are paying some type of concession to me. And any of those properties, and this is what I'm going to do. Again, everybody's a little different. And I would do this now. I think most of us on a buyer's agent tenant representation agreement, they say that, hey, 3% on there. I think every one of us put 3%, right? For the commissions. So technically right now, if we get a sell and it says 2%, that buyer is responsible for the extra 1% right now in our current agreements. No one like requires them to do that though. I'm going to do that same thing, me personally, right? And so it's just about articulating that. It's like, hey, yes, I'm going to negotiate the best I can on this concession, so you don't have to come out of pocket anything at all. And then you're going to have, in my opinion, a minimum. This is just worst case scenario, but there will be situations where your client seriously can barely scrape by putting 3.5% down on FHA. How are they going to come back with a 3% or this or that? And you might have to have a minimum conversation with them, worst case scenario. But what I always like to tell them is I'm going to accept whatever concessions that those property owner is giving. If it's 1%, that's fine with me. It's 1.5%, that's fine with me. Because I'm in this full time. This is a long-term play. My whole goal here is to earn your business for life. And when you think about real estate, you think about Michael, to any friends, family members, anything like that, and I get referrals. And so that's, I think, articulating that up front and letting them know that is key. And then the minimum conversation is going to come back whenever there's more pushback. And let me tell you what the pushback could be. And again, this is all just scenarios that could possibly happen. I have not run into this one yet, but we've thought about this as a team, and it could happen. Okay, Michael, or I'm going to use David just because he's here now. But David, you don't have to answer this. I'll answer it. Okay, David. Well, you're trying. Like, I hear what you're saying, but this agreement still says 3% on it, and it still says that I'm required to pay this 3%. Like, I don't want to sign this. And I think that's where we have to say, hey, I hear what you're saying. I have to have this percentage as the max amount that I could make. And a lot of these sellers are still offering 3% concessions. And so I have to have that on there. What I'm telling you right now, and again, we're going to wait to see how the agreements go because I don't know exactly how it is, but hopefully there's a way that we could put on there that if there's not any concessions being offered, that the minimum or the maximum amount that they would have to come out of pocket is X amount, whatever that amount is for you, your minimum fee. It could be a dollar amount, it could be a percentage amount, but it essentially says, hey, as long as I get paid 1%, and I'm just going to act like the minimum is 1%, as long as I get 1% from the seller, you don't have to pay anything. If I get a 0.5%, then you would be responsible for the other 0.5%, but it lowers that amount altogether. I'm not telling you guys to discount your commission. I hope you're not taking that into consideration. I am getting you prepared that these are real life scenarios that are going to happen, that are going to come up with FHA buyers, with VA buyers that just don't have a lot of money to put up front. I mean, I'm seriously under contract right now on an $800,000 house that we're going VA, and they're putting maybe, I think the total out-of-pocket cost is going to be $3,000 at the end of the day. So it's like there are people out there that can afford these really expensive houses, but they don't have, I don't know why, it's their finances, but they don't have like tons of money in the bank. So we have to be prepared for those scenarios. Anything to add on that, David?
Well, I was just kind of thinking there, again, you're leading in that conversation with the value that you're bringing to the table initially. Like we don't talk about how much something costs without talking about what it is they're actually getting, right?
Good point. Yeah.
And so, since you've already established that value there, whether it's, your risk mitigation, skills, or your negotiation skills and things like that, that you're sharing with them, just make sure that you know your own value. Be confident in your value, and then when you get to that point in the conversation, reassure them like, hey, there are definitely a lot of really nice properties out here that are still able to provide that minimum concession that you feel that you are worth there. And as part of that conversation, just let them know like, hey, if you seriously cannot provide this extra amount, that's not a problem. We'll just find the properties that will provide for that for you. So that's part of that conversation there.
David, and I don't know if Amanda's on here or not, but Amanda had a really good one in one of our meetings, and she basically said in there, she said, and I love it because she's straight to the point. And mind you guys, I want you guys to think you've already provided your value. You've brought your buyer's packet. You brought I think a lot of us now, and I know David has like 100 and something like things that realtors do, whatever that is, like, right? It just shows you everything that we do throughout a whole transaction. But Amanda says, hey, my fee is 3%. That's what my fee is. Now, we are going to get that paid by the seller. I'm going to negotiate that with the seller. But just in case there are properties out there that are not offering that 3%, do you want me to just not even send you those? Like, we just won't even look at those. And that way, we're just seeing the properties that are offering the concessions. And I think buyers might, and we'll see, but buyers might be like, yeah, no, I don't want to have to worry about concessions at all. So only that, because we definitely want representation. Or others might be, well, you know what, let's see what they do offer. Maybe they offer, a half of that, and then we can pay the other half. But it's all about giving your value. And I want to make that clear. You have to provide value to make sure that they understand. And just like David said, your negotiating skills, maybe bring stats, bring your own personal stats. And if you're a newer agent, bring, mentors or team members or teams stats there on what you've on average been able to negotiate down. Oh, Amanda, go ahead. I see you raising your hand.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would say. I'm just from a compliance standpoint, don't proactively not send them houses that a buyer's agent wouldn't get paid on. But for you to say what is your criteria, and for you to say as a criteria option, if they're not paying a buyer's agent, do you want that sent to you? If they say no, then ethically and legally, you're able to filter those out. That'll overcome a lot of objections.
If I did not properly articulate that, Amanda just did, but that is what I was saying. So yes, exactly. Oh, what was I gonna say here? Oh yeah, I have right here. Oh, that's what I was saying. Sorry. You have to bring your value. And when I was saying the negotiation, like what value or what stats can you bring? You can bring, the past however many sales, 20, 25, 30, however many sales you have, and say, well, my average list price to sales price ratio is this, meaning I've been able to negotiate 5% off of this, off the asking price, when the average is 2, right? The average in the neighborhood's 2, or the area is 2. I've been able for my clients to negotiate 5. It doesn't mean that I'll be able to negotiate everyone off 5, but that's my average. Multiple offer situations, right? I've been in this many multiple offer situations. I've been able to get this many under contract. And these are the steps that I do. And this always is going to work better in person. That's why I think if you can meet them in person, you can get them and you can earn their business by showing the value there. But you all want to have some type of unique value proposition that you can give to your clients to make them feel super comfortable with, like, yeah, let's go ahead and sign, even if it's a week thing. Now, I know we all want long-term agreements, but like, hey, yeah, let's do this. Let's see these 5 properties, see how it goes. And for me, I'm cool with that. I'm not going to lose the business. If they walk around with me for 5 properties, they're going to see the personability, they're going to see the knowledge, they're going to see the experience based off how I tour properties. So I'm confident that they're going to want to extend that and sign a long-term one. Let me see if I have any other ones. And then actually, let me just share one personal one, and then we can get to some Q&A. So I've had 2 different sellers now at this point ask me, and it's been straight up specific. Hey, I know there's a lot of stuff going on right now with commissions, with agent commissions, stuff like that. What is it? Like, what's happening? What's going on? And these are sellers. Do I have to pay the buyer's agent? Like, it's making it seem like, we don't have to pay them. Be prepared for that question. Not even objection, really, but just them asking that question. Because you don't want to, and I did this the first time, and I felt like I over-talked it. It ended up being fine. I got the listing, they're paying 6% commission, all that good stuff. But I definitely felt like I over-talked it the first time. So I would highly recommend that if you're not doing scripts on this, to start doing scripts specifically geared towards this NAR question and these specific type objections, because they're just not your normal objection that we're having to overcome. And so that's happened to me twice, and I've made sure to be able to properly articulate, hey, this is what's going on in the marketplace now. This is the reason why we still want to offer buyer's agent commissions now. It's going to, and I tell them it's going to be changed to concessions come August 17th, unless anything gets extended. So there is going to be some different verbiage, but the main difference is that concession amount is no longer going to be listed on the MLS. It's going to be directly negotiated through, each transaction or each property, and then see if they have additional questions. But most of the time they're like, well, why would I, again, it goes up to the seller objection. Why would I pay a buyer's agent commission? You need to know how to overcome that. So, David, do you have anything before we open it up?
No, that pretty much covers it pretty well.
Cool. Well, the Tesoro team here said, what do you think your conversation is going to look like when you have a sell by and your seller agrees to pay concessions to a buyer's agent, but when buying their dream home, there is no concessions? Great question. The great question here. This will be a tricky one. This will be a tricky one. And I think it's going to be about expectations as well, right? So when I say expectations, when you're talking to a seller up front, you have to tell them like averages, all that good stuff in the neighborhood, because I think that'll make them feel better about it. But that doesn't mean that they have to pay concessions. I mean, technically you could come back here and you could pay $0 concessions. So if that were to happen, again, I'm going to use my personal opinion on this because that's just like what I'm going to do for me. I would work with them on that. I've already gotten the sell. I've already gotten, or I'm getting the sell. I'm getting this commission on the sell. I'm going to charge them a minimal amount on the buy side. And you have to be transparent with them up front whenever you have to have a signed agreement. So whenever you're doing that, maybe already have some type of conversation saying, listen, if they're not paying you this, I'm already getting, I'm not greedy. I'm already getting this. We'll work something out, whatever that might be. Again, every person's different. I already do this with my current clients that buy and sell from me. I do not charge full commission on both sides. I just never have. I don't know why. I just never have, and I get a lot of referrals now, and that's primarily my business. And I'm just going to continue to do what's been working for me. So that's how I would handle that. Just be very transparent and upfront about what could happen, and then see how it goes. When we have a script, but it's not geared around the NAR stuff yet. It's in process. So bear with us. And as soon as that's out, we will post on Team Legacy and we'll pin it. Yeah, we have specific scripts though that are geared towards buyers and sellers, but they're not the NAR stuff. So what we've been doing for our script practice, and I've actually enjoyed doing this. Again, I'm going to get with everybody so y'all know, Monday, Wednesday, what time those are. And sometimes we have it on Fridays, but we've been getting in there, and like I'll randomly, and I'll call on David and say, okay, David, you are the seller or buyer. And I would say when you're going to be the agent. So David, you say, hey, I'm a seller. And then you say your objection. And the objection is specifically geared towards NAR stuff. And then when it would be up to you to overcome that objection. And then we all discuss it and we all chat about it and we all talk about it. And I like that because it just gives so much more. It's not like a uniformed thing. It's like, hey, you're getting something different every single time. And then in there as well, we would have, full scripts as well, but we don't have anything with PDF. It's in the works. Sorry. Any other questions, objections that you thought about, or maybe you've came into, or even anything that you guys would like to share?
I think ultimately it's also important just to make sure that when we are, talking about this specific topic with our, buyers and sellers, that the energy that we're bringing to the conversation is still upbeat. It's still positive, because it is positive. Again, these are conversations and things like that should have been happening all the time. It's great that it came to the forefront, and now we're here and having those conversations and just being transparent and helping as many people as we can through this, period of change in the world of real estate.
Absolutely.
So it's still an exciting time to be a realtor.
Amanda, I always love the raised hands. Go ahead.
I don't like to interrupt. So something I think is a really easy fix for me as a listing agent is for the listing agents to really educate the sellers, like you were talking about. I think that really overcomes a lot of the buyer objections that we're going to have to deal with and kind of prevent them. And I had one just this week, and I think realigning, I feel like people assume that this lawsuit is just saying you don't have to pay a buyer's agent. But if you really read the lawsuit, the whole issue is people weren't disclosing that commissions are negotiable. And so if you really just educate them in the fact that, hey, there were a lot of people who said it's 6% or bust, or they were charging more, and they weren't they were creating a monopoly, if you will, and just educating them on what the situation was and what the solution was, that now we just need to disclose that commissions are negotiable, and they've always been. Really, nothing has changed other than the fact that we have to educate them. Nothing has changed. It's always been negotiable.
Funny enough, Amanda, my cousin, he lives in Tennessee. He texted me yesterday And I don't know, he knows I'm a real estate agent, of course, but just out of the blue, he's like, hey man, how's this lawsuit thing going to affect you? Like, is it going to have negative effect on you? And first of all, I was like, oh, that's cool. I guess you're keeping up with this, but my reaction to it is I don't think it's going to affect me. I don't. And that's the mindset I'm leading in with this, is it's not going to affect how I work with buyers, how I work with sellers, other than the fact that I'm just going to set proper expectation, be fully transparent. And you have to have confidence whenever you're talking with your clients. If you do, you're going to continue to be successful. And one thing Wynn actually just asked again, and I love this, what about new agents? How are they going to overcome this? They now have to compete with seasoned agents. This is where new agents, it's so important to have proper mentors in this business. If you have proper mentors in this business that you can rely on, that have great training, that collaborate, that is going to be key, because you can always fall back on your mentor and you can always rely on your mentor to help out. So when, in my opinion, that's how new agents are going to overcome this and get through this, is through proper agent collaboration, mentorship, and making sure they choose the right person to go with on that.
And participate in the script practices. You know, be proactive.
Great. Yeah, David, thank you so much. When I will say this, our script practice are super, I host the script practices. It's very, I want everyone to participate, is what David's saying. If you come in there, you know, every day, week after week, but you never volunteer or whatever, maybe I never call on you or something happens like that, you're not really ever going to get any better at it. You're hearing it, but hearing it and then actually being able to articulate that in a conversation is two totally different things. So get out of your comfort zone. That's how you're going to grow. What is growth? What is it? Growth starts at the edge of your comfort zone. It's like, that's where you're going to grow in your business. Amanda said, it's up to us as agents to educate sellers now more than ever. Agree. That's all it is. It's just us educating, expectations, transparency. I do not think this is going to change that much. I really don't. I think at first everybody was freaking out. The more and more stuff keeps coming out on it, it's like, it's stuff we were already doing. We're just going to add a little bit more info in there, a little bit more, and proceed on.
And like you said, I know, like you said about the data. So for that particular seller that I met with, I said, you know, I charge 3%. It's up to you. Like I said, commissions are negotiable of what you're charging the buyer's agent, but let's pull a CMA and just see what these most recent closings are, the ones that are actually funded, see what they've been paying the buyer's agent. And that way I didn't have to tell them. They were able to see, if you want someone to bring you a buyer, this is probably what the market trend is doing. And they got to make that decision, but it still ended up being 3%.
Right. 100%, 100%. And that's just going to keep, I'm telling you, the top producing agents in our market are still going to do that and still going to provide the proper info and be able to articulate why it's, you know, it's smarter to offer that concessions. I mean, that's just how it's going to go. I do think it's going to be the easy way out for a seller to come and say, you know, I don't want to pay anything. And then an agent be like, okay, you don't have to. I think that's an easy way out, and that's not going to be the norm. Anybody else? Any other questions before we let you guys go on this? Okay, cool. So script practice. So we do this Monday at about 9:30ish, because we try to do this after our team meeting. So we have team meeting from 9 to 9:30, and then everybody could jump on at 9:30. And then we do it Wednesday at 9. I'm checking my schedule really quick because I want to make sure that I don't have anything tomorrow at 9. No, so yeah, tomorrow at 9, we'd be good. And then Fridays is always it's a hit or miss type thing. I like being able, hopefully we can all, I know we have a large Houston message thread in through Facebook. I think that's where we're going to start basically saying, hey, we're doing this, we're not doing this or whatnot on Fridays, but Monday and Wednesday, I really want to get super consistent with this, have a lot of people join and participate, because I contribute a lot of my success to the first team that I joined in real estate, who is, and still to this day, is very scripted and all about contacts. I think all of those conversations has helped me get to a point to where now when I talk to buyers and sellers on the phone, I can make them super comfortable just by having a conversation with them. So this is very important. If you're not doing script practice, highly recommend doing it. So anyway, guys, that's it. Thanks so much for joining. Really appreciate it. And then of course, reach out if y'all have any questions at all.
Man, good stuff. Thank